Great. So thank you all for joining us for today's partner panel on youth engagement as part of Baltimore Week. As you know, we've had a number of activities this week to celebrate and highlight the work that Johns Hopkins University is doing in the Baltimore's communities. We started off Monday with our myths and tips panel to talk to you about the different myths that you might have heard about Baltimore and working in communities, and had some of our great community-based organizations come on to give you tips about how to work with them. Then on Tuesday, we had our racial justice concert series, which was, if you missed it, please make sure that you get the link from us. Go to our website. We had a really good concert with a Baltimore-based organization, as well as highlighting a community organization that does work in Baltimore's communities. And then on yesterday, we also had our East Baltimore virtual bus tour, something totally different from what we do, or what we did before the pandemic, where we were actually able to get on a bus and take you around East Baltimore for approximately 2.5 hours to talk about some of the assets that we have in the community and some of the ways that we work with those community organizations. We condensed that into about a half hour for you all, and even did a debrief with a longtime community advocate and a consultant to our program, and that's Mr. Glenn Ross, who, if you have not heard from or about Glenn Ross, I would definitely encourage you to look him up. Great guy who's done a lot of work in Baltimore's communities, especially East Baltimore. But today, we are going to do another one of our great engagement activities, where we're bringing on 4 of our really great community partners that focus on community or youth engagement for the Baltimore community. And so I'm going to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. But let me just tell you a little bit about how this is going to go. So we're going to start by asking the partners to introduce themselves. They're going to talk to you a little bit about what they do, how their work has changed during the pandemic or even coming out of the pandemic. And if you have specific questions for these organizations, please put that in the chat. We'll give you an opportunity at the end of the presentations for all 4 of our panelists to ask them questions, whether it's questions about how to volunteer, how they do the things that they do, or how to get in contact with them. We'll give you the opportunity to do that. Some of our organizations actually will put a link into the chat where you can figure out how to volunteer with them directly, but also at the end of the presentations, we are going to provide you with a link to a Google document. So if anyone at the end of the presentations wants to volunteer with any of the organizations, you can go onto that link and make sure that you put in your contact information. It'll be given to the community organizations that we have with us today, so that they can get directly back to you about how and when you can volunteer with them. And so I don't want to hold them up. I know we have a limited amount of time, but really excited that we have 4 of our great organizations. From Art with a Heart, we have the executive director, Randy Pupkin. From Thread, we've got Nikhil Gupta, Commodore John Rodgers. We have Hannah Wallace, and Reading Partners, Jake Salzberg. And so I think I will go in that order, if you all don't mind, and I'll stop sharing my screen and give you an opportunity to share yours if you need to. We can start it with Randy. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you for having me. Hi, everybody. So let's share screen. So I am the founder and executive director of Art with a Heart. 1 second. 1 minute. Oh, wait, 1 second. Sorry, always happens, right?
We're living in a different world now, right?
Well, especially, pushing 60. It's all new. Okay, 1 second. Okay. Let me go back to this. So I am the founder and executive director of Art with a Heart, and still learning Zoom. The mission of the organization is to enhance the lives of people in need through visual art. And when we talk about the organization, we often use the analogy of a tree, which is right here. And the trunk of the tree, I always say I planted seeds in the community, and the trunk of the tree are our core programs that happen in schools, shelters, group homes, community centers, hospitals, senior facilities, veterans facilities. We program with, we always say 2 to 102. Now it's probably even older than that. And over the course of the 21 years since we've been doing this work, the tree has grown branches, as you can see. And we have a very robust public art and community service efforts. So I will explain more about our community service as we go through this presentation. We also have an Art of Leadership program, which engages 10th and 11th grade students in dialogues across cultural barriers. We have 111 students in the alumni program of that program, and currently have 21 students from 16 different schools in the 7th cohort of that program. We also started 17 years ago a workforce development program, HeartWorks, where we use art as a vehicle to teach job skills. And from that initiative, we 10 years ago, or a little more than 10 years ago, opened a store called Heart Wares, which is a social enterprise retail store. And we sell the wares of the marketable art that is made by students in our workforce development program. All of these initiatives have opportunities for volunteering. So the first initiative, and since we are a visual art program, it's best to use visuals. So we always do some mindfulness practice. We are back in 15 schools as the art teacher, so we are pretty much back to our pre-pandemic work. We, during the pandemic, did both, well, actually 3, in-person, virtual, and a hybrid of that. So I know everyone here can read, but this is what Art with a Heart's work, the core programs that happen in the community. They stimulate the imagination, increase academic growth, they grow social emotional learning competencies like self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. And then I want to share just the diversity of the work that we do with painting. Actually, the picture of the monster is when students are learning about the severe 7, which are all the different shapes. Watercolors. Ceramics. Mosaics. And then this is one of our favorite school projects that we did. It's at Windsor Hills. And this was when we were finished. We did a whole game board. And all of those people are either interns, students, or volunteers. One of my favorite projects. So as I said, we have a very robust community service and public art effort here at Art with a Heart. This is a mosaic installation at Enoch Pratt Library, the main branch. And this was created by over 500 volunteers and community members, stakeholders of the library as well. So we engage both service groups. It can be, a fraternity, a sorority, an affinity group, corporate groups. We engage them, and we host individual volunteers. One of the questions that was asked of us is like, what is the time commitment? And really it varies. And we basically accommodate individuals in what they can do to help us with our efforts. So this is how things start. And then that's how they, it's like how it started, how it's going, how it ended. That's at the Ronald McDonald House in East Baltimore. And then just some different public art projects. When somebody volunteers with the organization, commonly they help work on public art projects. This is at Chase Brexton. And then this is in West Baltimore in honor of a firefighter who lost her life in the line of training. And then our workforce development program, I mentioned that in the intro. Students in this program make marketable works of art that are then sold in our social enterprise retail store, Heart Wares. And often volunteers will help us glaze these projects, finish the projects, work with the students as mentors. Art with a Heart studio space is like a melting pot of individuals. Some people walk in here and they say, this is how the world should always be. It's a great group of just a diverse group of people, diverse in race, age, religion, socioeconomic background, and they're all working together for a common goal. Some of the students in our workforce development program. We also have a digital arts initiative as part of the job program, and they learn web design, graphic design, 3D modeling and printing, and here they are working in our conference room pre-pandemic. Now that is all done either in a hybrid model or virtually. And then these are some of the products in the store that are made by students in the program. And there's nothing like seeing a student when we were all in person working in the store and selling the items that they've made. Now, during the pandemic, we were at a lot of farmers markets, smaller markets, and we have a very robust online marketplace. And we share the proceeds of all of the sales with our community partners. So if we partnered with the Ronald McDonald House and their residents made products that sold, we would share the proceeds with them. Actually, these are some of the products in the store made by students. And then the last initiative on our tree is that Art of Leadership, and we're in our 7th year of that program. It was started, it was birthed out of, I did a leadership program in 2008, and someone made a racist joke to me as I was leaving after a year of learning, and I thought, wow, like we need to start this conversation younger, because clearly that gentleman didn't learn anything over the last year. So I started to talk to the board about starting this initiative, and on the 15th anniversary of the organization, we committed the funds to make this program happen. And the students in this program are going to be change makers in our universe. And it's just, it's a joy and a pleasure to watch how they grow and learn and create a network that they otherwise would not know but for this program. So as I said, we have 111 alumni. Our cohort has, well, it's 21 students in our 7th cohort. And we do lots of different things. That's Dee Watkins. He's a writer from Baltimore. And then one of the other things we do is we show the documentary Charm City, and we have all of the people featured in that film come as a panel to talk to the students about their Baltimore experience. And then just wanted to share a highlight of our year. For our 20th anniversary, which was March 2020, we were going to do a lot of things, and of course everything was canceled, but we decided that we were going to proceed with creating this beautiful sculptural heart, which stands 8 feet by 6 feet. It's going to be in front of the University of Maryland Hospital. I know that that might be taboo on this call, but we'll make one for Hopkins too. It has 2,400 ceramic hearts with messages of hope and inspiration. And it was all created during the pandemic by 953 volunteers. So thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I will put our website in the chat, so if you want to find out different ways to get involved or support the organization, you can find out there.
Thanks, Frandy. I beat you to the punch. I already put the website into the chat. So as you all can see, Art with a Heart does a lot. over 900 volunteers that just focused on that one piece of art. That is absolutely amazing. But it's more than just focusing on the art. You heard about the different programs and other ways that you can also get involved. So thank you very much, Randy. Before we get into questions, let's continue with the presentations, and we'll try to do questions just a little bit later. So next, how about we hear from Nikhil from Thread, and talk about all the ways that people can get involved with Thread.
Thanks, Tony. Hi, everyone. Really awesome to be here with you all. If you got here by way of the flyer, I probably look a little different than who you saw. I got a haircut and glasses. No, actually, Sarah, our CEO and founder, was really excited to be here with you all, but she had a family situation arise. My name is Nikhil. I'm Thread's managing director, and I'm really excited to talk with you all about the work that we're doing. I think like where I kind of want to start is just reflecting on, especially among a group of, current and future medical and health professionals, just like what have we learned through this pandemic? And I think we've learned some I don't know about you all, but I've learned a lot about myself individually, but I also think we've learned a lot about us collectively. And I think some of the things that come to mind for me are first that, barriers and challenges and resource access don't hit all communities equally, right? And I think we've seen over the course of the past year and a half just how both, for some folks, transitioning into a COVID world as it related to work was painless. And for some people, they actually gained a lot from having the opportunity to spend more time at home. For others, that wasn't the case, right? Depending on their job or what their home environment looked like. Second thing I learned was that we might not all be working towards the same goal, and we might not all be working towards our goals. And I don't know if you all have been reading the headlines recently, but I think that we're going through a year of just unprecedented change and people kind of zooming out and asking themselves, like, what is it that I really care about? And what is it that I want to spend my days doing? And I think the new term is the Great Resignation. And so a lot of folks, I think, are really realigning to the things that they get excited about. And the final thing is just that we all need community and connection. And so I think on an individual level, when you're forced to isolate and change how you engage with one another, I think you start to appreciate and deepen the relationships that you do have. I know that I have wonderful people in my universe, and I had some friends who might have been more engaged with me at a superficial level, and I found myself kind of realigning who I was spending my time with. And then collectively, I think what became so clear is how critical kind of common experience is to our shared identity. So I think as we've navigated through some really hard conversations this year, a revised racial reckoning across the country, discussion around, pandemic response and vaccines and all kinds of stuff. The question is, how easy is it to have those real conversations with each other? How do we engage with one another, especially in a world where we're kind of confined to screens and, meetings with agendas, and we don't have the same kinds of informal, casual opportunities to share about ourselves and to build that empathy in between. And I think Thread for 17 years has been trying to sit at the intersection of those challenges. And so Thread's guided. It was actually created at the Hopkins Med campus, so you all are very much family already, whether you know it or not. But it's guided by a single belief, and that's that deep, meaningful relationships are transformative. And that's especially true across lines of difference, because they not only provide us with the support that we all need individually, but they're the relationships that challenge our notions of self, the world, and enable us to grow. And so every year, Thread enrolls young people who fall in the bottom 25% of their class by GPA at the highest need public schools in the city, and we surround them with a family of volunteers for 10 years. And we have one goal, and that's just to coach folks to form deep, meaningful relationships with each other, to become each other's friends and family. And what we found is that when we do that well, when we can coach people through their bias and their assumptions, and when we can help people in engaging in those connections, especially across lines of difference, that everyone grows in these really immense ways. And so if you take the example of our young people, the average young person in Thread has a starting GPA of 0.7, which I think is impressively low. I think our young people try really hard to actively not do their homework or go to class. And in Baltimore City, students who start with a GPA of 1.0 or less in ninth grade have a 6% chance of graduating from high school. 6%. And I don't know about you, but to me, that is just, when I learned about that, that just feels like such a lost opportunity, that we have all this brilliance across the city that is not being leveraged, not being tapped, not being enabled to help solve some of the persistent challenges that we all face. And what we found in Thread is that when you can surround a young person with an individual group of relationships that not only build up someone's motivation and confidence on the individual level, but then give them access to a much wider set of social capital, right? Through really, really simple actions. You know, I'm talking a ride to school, hanging out and exploring the Inner Harbor, you know, working on homework after school down the street at Dunbar High School. Really simple things when we can engage in that steady work that our young people grow in these immense ways. And so in Thread, they graduate at more than 10 times the rate of their peers. We have 79% of our young people graduate from high school across 6 years. And what's even cooler to me is that when you extend that out, right, we're with our young people for 10 years. And of our young people who have done all 10 years in Thread, 62% of them have completed a post-secondary academic or professional degree. So I think like what you'll find is that our young people have everything that it takes and then some. And so it's really just about a question of, are we showing up for them in the ways that we owe to our young people so that they can actually accomplish the goals that they have set for themselves and lead. And then on the volunteer side, I think what we see over and over again is people just immensely growing on a personal level, right? Especially in the last year, but I mean, it's not a new conversation. I think we talk a lot about concepts like race and class and privilege and, you know, economic inequality. And there are these big, heady theoretical things, but the question is, what are we doing to kind of engage with that at an individual and personal level? And I think what we find is that in Thread, volunteers have the real opportunity, you know, when your social circles radically transform, and when your friends and family are, you know, a young person in West Baltimore and a retiree up in Roland Park and a young professional in Federal Hill, then you start to understand exactly where your blind spots are, right? And you start to learn and grow in all kinds of new ways. And that's really what we're here to do. What we know is that that work is really hard. And so like building relationships across lines of difference, not easy. And what we found is that the way that we can make it easier is by making sure that you don't have to go through it alone. And so at Thread, everyone we think is on a journey of growth, and everyone has a coach. And so our young people are designated volunteers that we call family members. And those are the volunteers that work. It's probably what you're thinking about. Let me put up a little picture, and I think that it's probably going to be more aligned to what you're thinking about, right? Volunteers that work directly with our young people week in and week out. They do things like a ride to school, homework help, going out for food. Food's a really big one. FaceTiming, right? Anything that you would do with your own friends and family. And that's how they build those individual relationships and connections. But we know that family members need support because that's not easy to do. And so every group of family members and young person has a volunteer leader called a head of family. And the head of family's job is actually to support the entire family of volunteers and young people in working towards their goals. And to do that primarily by supporting the adult volunteers. And so we've got volunteers who actually spend all their time in Thread, not engaging with the young person, but really supporting the volunteers themselves. You know, if you're trying to figure out, how do I form a strong connection with this young person? Or, you know, there's a barrier that we've encountered that I don't know how to solve through, you know, that's the kind of stuff that your head of family supports with. But we know that that's not easy to do either. And so every head of family has another volunteer coach called, you guessed it, a grandparent. And the grandparents are doing for the heads of family exactly what the heads of family are doing for family members. So everyone has a coach in Thread. Grandparents are coached by full-time staff members called community managers. And in that way, we've kind of created a layered community where you always kind of have an extra layer of support to navigate through the work, because we think that's what's critical. Real briefly, what I'll say at the end is like, how has that work changed during COVID? I think, you know, it, in some ways, I think the activities and the mechanisms have changed. We've had to learn how to use Zoom really quickly. But I think that the core work hasn't really, right? If you think about what you do with your friends and family and how that's evolved throughout this time, that's really how our community is evolving as well, right? So I remember, in the first week, like literally when Baltimore shut down in March 2020, I called my parents and I was like, hey, do you have 2 weeks of groceries? And they said no. And I like yelled at them until they went and got 2 weeks of groceries, right? And then what we did was we called every single young person and volunteer in Thread, and we asked, do you have 2 weeks of groceries? And if they said no, we went and delivered 2 weeks of groceries, right? The second thing I did was I taught my mom how to use Zoom, which was a journey. And we decided to have a weekly family call for the whole family every Tuesday evening to just check in and make sure that everyone was okay, given that we couldn't spend as much time together in person. And that's the kind of thing that our families are doing in Thread as well. And so overall, what we've seen is like that continues to evolve. We're really back in a really largely hybrid and in-person formation. So there's lots of opportunities to connect up, young people and volunteers going out and safely getting food, going to local festivals. We're hosting our, every once in a while, we're kind of alternating our volunteer meetings, or sometimes in person, sometimes virtual. And so there's kind of opportunities for you to plug in the ways that feel comfortable while still working towards, I think, that deeply interpersonal connection that makes Thread what it is. And so I think my colleague Maria is going to put in the chat, if she hasn't already, a link to learn more. But I would just encourage you all, if you're looking to get to know Baltimore better, I mean, truthfully, I think any of the organizations on here, I mean, I'm such big fans. You can't really go wrong. I think Hannah, Randy, and Jake, you all do such incredible work, and we work with these guys all the time. We all, we're all kind of part of the same network. But I think if you're trying to deeply get to know a young person and a group of volunteers on an individual level, I think Thread's a really great way to do that. I hope you'll consider learning more. Thanks.
Thanks, Nikhil. That was great. And I think you made a really good point. All the organizations that we work with really, because we know that you students have a limited amount of time on campus, we are really intentional about the organizations, the partners that we send you to. And so you have really good organizations that are on this panel discussion today. And I would encourage you that as you go through the chat, if you are interested, I know I've put a link. I think Thread has put a link in as well. If you're interested in volunteering with any of these organizations, please feel free to go to those links and make sure you update your information to them so that we can have you volunteering with some really good organizations that do really great work in the Baltimore community. So let's just continue to keep this going before we get to any more questions. And I would encourage that if anyone has questions, please don't hesitate to put those into the chat. So let's continue now with Commodore John Rodgers, and we'll have Hannah talk to us about what you are doing.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am the community school coordinator here at the Commodore John Rodgers School. This is my 3rd year in the role. And we are located very close to the Hopkins East Campus at 100 North Chester Street. So many of the students, you guys are already part of our school community. We are a Title I public school in Southeast. We serve pre-K through 8th grade, about 900 students. And we are a community school. So that is sort of a specific designation within the Baltimore City public school system. And the pillars of a community school are an increased focus on family engagement, community partnerships, enhanced academics, college and career readiness, youth development, and health and social services. And so my role as the coordinator is to make sure that our school priorities, our school activities, all align with these objectives, as well as to manage sort of the family and community partnerships here at the school. And so some of that engagement, what that looks like is we have what we call Coffee at Commodore. So we will bring in our community partners to meet with parents in sort of small groups in the mornings over coffee and breakfast. We partner with various organizations in the city to do like farmers markets here at the school. We provide a lot of food to our families with the Maryland Food Bank as well. And then a special emphasis this year and last year, especially on health and social services. So partnering with like Mobile Dentist and Vision for Baltimore to make sure that our students get their routine dental exams and cleanings, to make sure students are getting their eyes screened, that they can be provided glasses. And then a lot of effort in the past year to technology to make sure that each of our students have not only a device at home, but that they have internet, which has been a huge, barrier for virtual learning. So we have partnerships that support all of the pillars of what a community school is, whether it is in the classroom for our students or supporting our families. And so last year, most of our volunteer opportunities did transition to being virtual. And we totaled 2,300 volunteer hours over the school year. And Hopkins students contributed 550 of those hours. So you all have a long kind of history of being a really valuable partner here at Commodore. Our parents know that you all work in our classrooms. Our students are really familiar with the volunteers, and it's a great resource for staff as well, because you guys bring such a high level of professionalism and dedication and knowledge. So we do offer both kind of one-time events as well as sort of semester or year-long opportunities. And so this year we're specifically focusing on math and literacy tutors for our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. We also look to volunteers for interpretation during our student-led conferences. So these are held 3 times during the year and are an opportunity for students to share their progress with their teacher and with their parent. And we always try to provide those conferences in the family's preferred language. So having some additional support for Spanish and Dari is really helpful. And then supporting days that we do bring in the health services to the school to help explain to students what's going to happen, why is it important to have your teeth cleaned and get those x-rays, and what to expect. So for the math or literacy tutors this year, those are, the time commitment is really about an hour a week. We are looking to pair students to a specific classroom and with a teacher so that students can get into a routine of forming a relationship with you, and you can also get comfortable working with the teacher and working with the small group. All of the materials are already prepared, and we make sure that the teachers you are supporting provide you with those resources ahead of time and are there to support you so you don't have to create anything on your own. Our students get very accustomed to seeing you in the classroom, and it gives them something to look forward to, another reason to emphasize, their attendance at the school, that they're going to get to see you, see their buddy, to do some work. And then our volunteer times are pretty flexible. We are in school 8 to 3, so anywhere in there, there's usually a math or English class for the middle school. So we will try to accommodate your schedule. And then the final piece regarding math is that this can also be virtual. So last year we paired volunteers one-on-one with students to do evening tutoring based on your schedule. So we will continue that this year. If you'd rather work virtually, we'll connect you one-on-one with a student for a routine study session every week. And I also want to just shout out Source a little bit for most of the volunteer structure we actually have at the school has come from Source and a former Source Service Scholar project. So you guys not only have really contributed to our student success in the classroom, but also to kind of the operation side of the school. And this volunteer structure that we have really came about because of the Source Service Scholar Project. We usually host anywhere from about 40 to 60 Hopkins students a year in various capacities. So just a big thank you for your dedication and commitment to the communities that you are a part of. And in terms of next steps, and actually there's one more volunteer opportunity we have with our food pantry. So if you don't want to work necessarily with the students, our food pantry serves parents, it serves the community, and that is just twice a month for 2 hours in the mornings. So if you are interested in kind of working in terms of food access, we also have that, which begins next week. So just for next steps, please send me an email if you're interested. Volunteers do need to register with Baltimore City Public Schools, and that's just an online form. And then any volunteers that are working in person or one-on-one with students do have to get a background check with Baltimore City Schools. That is free, and the whole process probably takes about a week to just schedule your appointment and get that done. And once you have that background check, you will be set for your time at Hopkins anytime you want to come here and volunteer at the school. So we are looking forward to seeing you guys this year, and thank you for being here this afternoon.
Thanks, Hannah, and thanks for the shout out for the partnership that we have with Commodore John Rodgers. I know that over the years we've definitely had our Source Service Scholars involved with the school as well as just volunteers, and so I think that's what it's all about, that reciprocal sort of engagement that we both have, where we know of your needs and we're there to try to support in any way that we can the needs of the community. And that's what we've done through Source and Commodore John Rodgers. So thank you once again, and thank you again to all of our panelists. Of course, in the chat, I've also included a link. So if anyone is interested in any one of our panels so far, any one of our organizations, please feel free to go into that link and sign up right there, and I'll make sure that I get that information over to our community-based organizations. And finally, I am going to, sorry, I don't know the names of the organizations. Hey, so when we first started, or even in the information that we sent out, you sort of saw that we've got 4 really good organizations that you can be a part of. They are Thread, Commodore John Rodgers, Art with a Heart, and our final presentation today is going to be from Reading Partners. And so in the end, I'll also make sure that I put up the slide that has all the information or all the names of the organizations that presented today. And if you go to that link, you'll see each of the organizations' names are listed on separate tabs so that you can go directly to those tabs and directly go ahead and put in your information so that I can get it back to our organizations. But before we get to the questions, once again, I just want to give Reading Partners an opportunity to talk about what they do. And from Reading Partners, we have Jake Salzberg. Jake, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Tony. Let's get this all right up for y'all. All right. Wonderful. So we are Reading Partners, and I'm Jake Salzberg. I'm our Community Engagement Associate here. So Reading Partners, we're a national education nonprofit. We partner with students as well as their families, their schools, and their communities, all to provide an individualized literacy support and the foundational skills they need to read at their grade level by 4th grade. We do this by training community volunteers to deliver one-on-one literacy lessons using our structured and easy to follow evidence-based curriculum. You can see that our mission there on the slide is to help children become lifelong readers by empowering their communities to provide individualized instruction with measurable results. We partner with the students and their families by tutoring their students in the area of literacy, and we empower these students to succeed both in school and beyond. We also partner with the schools themselves. We tutor the students at the elementary schools where they're attending, and even though this year the schools will have all their students in person, we'll still be tutoring them fully virtually. We do have full-time AmeriCorps members who work closely with the principals and their teachers to ensure that the students are receiving the highest quality tutoring possible. And of course, like I mentioned, we also partner with their communities. So across the country, we mobilize thousands of volunteers who provide this one-on-one tutoring, using just our curriculum, and we train them in. And so that's how we really roll. I can show you a little bit here. You can see that across the country, we are in 12 different cities and or metro areas, if you want to call it. The literacy crisis that we're trying to fight here is a nationwide problem. So being a part of the effort here is able to support anywhere from over 200 under-resourced schools across the country. So nationwide, 35% of students are reading a grade level by 4th grade. That's not great. And in Baltimore, actually, I can tell you that that figure is 18 or so percent. Here at Reading Partners, we really believe that children have the right to quality education. And we know that because of a history of systemic barriers and policies, students aren't necessarily receiving individually supported programs that they really need. When we can ensure that each and every student can receive the literacy skills and educational opportunities they deserve, our entire communities can benefit from these skills and talents that they develop. Here in Baltimore, we've been operating in the community since 2011. This is actually our 10th anniversary this year, which is very exciting. We have grown to where we'll be serving anywhere from 500 to 700 students in 16 schools with the support of 700 to 900 volunteers. Students receive 2 tutoring sessions a week, and when possible, we love for our volunteers to be able to be with the same student for both sessions. If that's not possible, the student will get paired with 2 different volunteers, and they'll just work with both of them each week. We are a program that's supplemental to classroom instruction, so we're not trying to teach everything that a student might be working on in class. We're really focusing on the standards that we believe are fundamental to reading success, and the ones that can be taught in our twice-weekly format by our volunteers. For example, we don't really focus on spelling or handwriting for that matter, because that's better integrated with writing instruction that's done in the classroom. In our limited time with our students, we want to focus on our reading skills that they can build upon when they aren't with us. We are, of course, aligned with state standards so that we can best support their class instruction. We also support our students in multiple ways. So here in Baltimore this year, we are currently focusing on Reading Partners Connects. It's our new virtual system that we developed in the last year. Due to COVID-19 regulations, we are not delivering in-person tutoring, but normally we will be offering that in the future. Tutors can still provide their one-on-one literacy lessons through our virtual platform, but they're doing so via Zoom calls. The Reading Partners Connects curriculum is still based on our regular traditional program, but it's been adapted to virtual learning. And so last year, we were able to really expand our program to not only include these wonderful tutoring resources, but also family resources ranging from literacy packets for interested parents, as well as other family workshops for them too. We also partner with the Maryland Book Bank to ensure that students can receive at least 6 books, if not more, that they can add to their home library. We're excited to just keep going with this and see where that's going to go in the next year. It is really fantastic that in the last year we've been able to pivot so quickly to Reading Partners Connect. It was something we had in the works for a little bit of time, but we really had an impetus to move forward on that quickly and adapt that. And with the city providing computers to a lot of our students, it was easier to do that as well. So you can see across the city, we're partnering with 16 different schools. We're all over the place really, and we are looking to expand our reach as much as we can. You can just see, we have some up by Hopkins, I believe. Tench-Tillman is pretty close to the Hopkins campus right there, yep. And you can see we just have all these different schools all over the place. And, again, every year we're trying to grow our reach and see if we can partner with even more schools. So, how people can engage with us. We love people to volunteer to be tutors with us. At minimum, it's 1 hour a week. Like I mentioned, our students are getting tutored twice a week. So if there's more you can do and you're able to be there for both students with your both sessions with your student, that's fantastic. All of it, like I said, this year is fully virtual. The requirements for that are simple. As long as you have your own computer and reliable internet, as well as a private space to studio your student and a love to read, we're happy to have you on board. The only stipulation is, like I said, we do not want people to be on public computers or anything like that. So if you have your own private computer, that's what we have to have you do. Going through the rest of that process, there is an onboarding component. There's just 2 virtual trainings that will run you through, as well as a little quick check for understanding after that. And similar to other groups that we've talked about today, we also require you to get a background check through Baltimore City Public Schools. I have the link right there in our presentation if you're interested in signing up to volunteer. I'll also drop that in the chat for everybody. So I can do that right there. And, you know, in general, if you're just interested in seeing more about what we're doing, you can follow us on Instagram at RP Baltimore.
Great. Thanks, Jake. I definitely appreciate it, and thank you for all the work that you're doing with Reading Partners as well, and making sure that our students can actually engage with the work that you're doing. We did have a couple of questions to come into the chat, so I want to make sure that I spend time having you all answer these questions. I think last few did come in from you for Reading Partners. So the first question was, Jake, do we need to commit to in-person in the future, or is virtual okay?
So as it stands right now, we are planning on continuing our virtual system alongside our traditional system. So I don't think that that's going to necessitate coming back to being in person.
Gotcha. And does the background check need to be in person?
Yes, it does. So it does require you to go to the district office for Baltimore City Public Schools and perform fingerprinting. It's a really quick process. You can sign up for it online. If you're a regular volunteer, we also cover the background check fee there too. I've done it myself. It took me like 15 or 20 minutes. It's really a pretty painless process. And they try to make it as easy as possible for you.
I believe those were all the questions that I saw in the chat. If anyone else has any questions, feel free to add them in the chat. Ithika, I see that you raised your hand. If you want to unmute yourself, please go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. It's more like a general question for like all the organizations. So I just wanted to ask, as an international student, I'm interested in working with the youth here, but I have so many of the experiences they have and the problems they have. I don't really know many of them, and I might theoretically know them, but haven't experienced them. So my question is, as an international student who's neither Black or white, like, do the youth here feel okay like opening up, or like are there any particular aspects that I would not at all be able to approach them with? Like, that's my question.
And that was for anybody?
I'll give it a shot. I can identify with not being Black or white in a city where I think things are often defined in those terms. What I would say is, like, I think the beautiful part, I mean, I'm going to speak to Thread. I'm sure that my colleagues are going to speak to the other organizations, but I think it would apply across all situations, is a lot of, and what I would, if we had more time, I would talk about, like, when we talk about relationships across lines of difference, what we're really talking about is perceived difference. And I think that the way that the Thread community works is, like, what you're really working to do is find your areas of common interest and common experiences and things like that. And I think people would be surprised by who can find those commonalities and how quickly you can get towards your kind of, I don't know, joint experiences and points of connection. I think that it's critically important. Like, I think step one is being aware of where your blind spots might be. And I think that that is all you can ask, and then being really transparent about it, asking questions and things like that. But I think beyond that, just know that I think that your unique experiences are going to be one of your biggest strengths to offer. And I think we find that to be the case all the time. Like I said, I mean, we, similar to a lot of the other organizations that are speaking, we were founded at the Hopkins Med campus. We have a lot of international volunteers. We have a lot of med and public health and nursing students who are volunteers currently. And so, and a lot of them are placed at Dunbar High School, which is right down, it's like a 3-minute walk from campus. And so I think what you'll find is that you'll find your points of connection with young people, but you'll also find other volunteers who are engaging in that shared experience with you and get to know folks who you might not realize are on campus and engaged in the same activities.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nikhil. Nikhil, just one quick question. I think someone had asked, what are the age ranges again for the students or folks that you have the Thread family around?
Yeah, good question. It ranges because we stay with young people for such a long time. So our youngest young person is 14. Our oldest young person, I think, is around 27. So it's a pretty wide range. And our oldest volunteer, I think, is like 81. And our youngest volunteer is 18. So it's a pretty get in there and I'd say, again, for folks who are on this call, most of you will be placed at Dunbar High School across the street, or you'll be paired with one of our post-high school students, most likely. That's kind of the one of the two options that'll happen. The other thing to emphasize, because I saw a question to me in the chat, was just to clarify, we stick with our young people for 10 years. We don't ask volunteers to commit for 10 years. We ask volunteers to commit for 1 year. And most volunteers end up sticking around for longer than that, but we're asking for a 1-year commitment. And just like a lot of the other organizations here, we're looking for a minimum of just 1 weekly engagement, which is usually a couple hours a week.
Great, thanks. Jake, I had a question on the hours for tutoring. What are your tutoring hours?
Sure, absolutely. Our standard tutoring hours during the week are Monday through Thursday, 9 to 5. So some of them are during school, some of them are also after school as well.
Great, thanks. I don't see any more questions for now, but I do have a question just for the panelists. Earlier this week, we had this myths and tips panel where, of course, we talked about all the myths that our students hear about working in Baltimore's communities. But I guess for the panelists that I would ask, just besides the myths, what is one tip that you would give to the students that want to work with your organization, just about the community and what they're going to see in terms of the culture that you have working in your organization?
Go ahead, Randy.
I was just going to say that it's really important to be consistent. I think that's probably one of the most impactful things you can do as volunteers. Be consistent. You build trust and relationships, and this is kind of all about what Thread is talking about. I know that consistency with all of the panelists here today, it's absolutely essential. Showing up for the communities that are served by these organizations is really important, and doing it consistently is essential.
Thanks, Randy. Anybody else?
Yeah, I can bounce off of that a little bit. I think the other thing that's really important is just listen to people's stories. I think everyone has something to share. There's a lot that you can learn from people by listening and trying to, understand someone's lived experience rather than trying to, expound your own upon someone else. Especially as an outsider, like I'm not from Baltimore. I moved here from outside Philly, and I can vibe similarly with a lot of what's going on here, but it's not the place that I called home for many, many years. So in order to just get that experience from people, it's really just important to just listen, take that time, let them tell you, don't say this is what you need. Tell people, and let people tell you what they're looking for and what they can ask for from their community.
Hannah, go for it.
I was just saying, I think the relationships are so important this year. And as we've started off the school year, that's really been the emphasis for our staff and classrooms, is that, academics will come this year, we'll get the kids to where they need to be, but we have to reconnect with them. We have to rebuild those relationships so that they feel safe at the school, they feel secure, they have that support system. And, as Randy said, like that, being able to come and have that consistency really provides the structure that the students need. And once they have a relationship with you, like everything will move, it'll be great. But just focusing on that aspect first will open a lot of doors in your volunteering and in your service.
Yeah, I think seconded everything that my peer said. I think the other thing on the flip side is recognizing that it's okay to not have it all together. And I think there's a myth sometimes that in order for you to volunteer, you've got to be, everything's got to be perfect, and I've got to be ready to like show up perfectly every single time. And that's just not true. Like, you all are as human as the people that we work with. And I think that where you'll actually find your power is when you are willing to be vulnerable with the folks. Like, I think if you come into it thinking that you're here to save, that's when you're going to be disappointed. But I think if you can come into it saying like, I really want to show up, I think I have something to offer and I have something to gain, you know, Randy's totally right. Consistency is important. And if you miss an appointment, part of being consistent isn't, you know, it doesn't say if you have an exam, you might not be able to show up, but it means you have to communicate with a young person, hey, I'm not going to be there this week, but I'll see you next week. Or, hey, can someone cover for me? And as long as you're willing to kind of show up again and again, and we say a lot of times in Thread, because trust takes a long time to build. And we have volunteers who, you know, it'll take them months to be able to form that initial connection. They'll show up like 7, 8 times to someone's house or to school, and it'll take a while. But if you can just focus on one more touch point, like, can I show up one more time? And how can I show up? And can I like be transparent about where I'm at? I think you'll find that you'll be able to accomplish a lot.
Thank you. Those were all really good tips. Really good tips that I actually put into the chat. So if you missed any of those, remember, show up, be consistent, listen to understand, let them tell you what you need, build those relationships, connect and rebuild. And it is okay to make mistakes. We're all human. We don't have it all together. So be vulnerable, and finally make sure that you communicate. So these are all some really, really good tips from our panelists, and I hope you all took that in. Once again, I just want to thank our panelists for all the work that you do and the partnership that we have with you to make sure that we are following up with you and making sure that our students actually get a really good engagement for communities in Baltimore City. So I just want to say thank you once again. We definitely appreciate you. Thank you for being part of our Baltimore Week's activities. And as soon as I have all the information gathered from all the students that want to get involved, I will make sure that I send that all to you. So I want to thank everyone again for joining us today. If you have not signed up to volunteer, make sure you go to that link that I put in the chat, that I'll put in there once again, so that you can volunteer with our organizations. And thank you for joining us for Baltimore Week. And so with that, I will sign off, and hope you all have a great day. Thanks.